Hi, everyone. Welcome to Authors on the Air. I'm your host, Pam Stack, back for the one and only Kristan Higgins, the only reason I would come back from medical leave. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you. And we have two special guest hosts of Kristan and mine choosing. But first of all, let me just welcome you back to Authors on the Air. I've missed all of you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm also thrilled to talk about the new Kristan Higgins book, Pack Up the Moon. Unlike anything she's ever written before, but with her absolutely essential wisdom and storytelling. It's so beautiful. When I've been on lockdown for medical leave, this is the book I read first, the first one I got. And it's right here tucked next to my heart. That's right. And I love it so much. We have a couple guests from Super Readers Group, Kristan Higgins Super Readers. Kristan, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you. It's so nice to be back, Pam.
I miss seeing you. I mean, we get to message and once in a while, so I miss you. Are you having a good time?
Yeah. I'm here at our little house on Cape Cod with my dog who's sleeping on the deck. I role model in life. He just goes from one nap to the next.
I love that.
Talking about Pack Up the Moon and talking a lot with my readers and stuff. And we have two today. We're so excited.
I know, but first I want to mention, and in case you didn't know about Kristan, she's gained a family member, haven't you?
Yes, I am a mother-in-law now. As of 12 days ago, I believe, my daughter married her wonderful fiance, and she's a nurse and he's a firefighter, and we called her the princess since birth. And so it's like the princess and the firefighter. It sounds like a novel,
It does. It does.
They are ridiculously good looking. So, I posted pictures on social media to, look at them, aren't they beautiful? And everyone is like, yes, they are. It's,
I have to say, Flannery's dress was exquisite in its simplicity. And your dress, which you had made for you by a costume designer, correct?
Yeah, my friend down the street just happens to be the costumer for a little unknown play. It's a historical and a musical. It's called Hamilton. I don't think anyone's heard of it yet.
No.
So she's wildly talented, and it happened to be the pandemic, so she wasn't making costumes because Broadway was closed. And I was, like every woman, it's so hard to find the dress for a special occasion. I have one daughter, one son. So I said, do you think you might make me a dress? And she did. And I loved it. And I've never had a dress made for my proportions, So I've never had a dress fit so well and look so good. And
it was beautiful. The color was exceptionally beautiful for you.
And it was really, really fun.
It was really beautiful. So who did you bring with you today to talk?
We have Marissa Sanchez from Illinois, and maybe I shouldn't say your last names. Sherry, sorry, from Ohio, Sherry.
We only are available in 153 countries. Everybody's going to know you. So. Don't mind. You're going to be famous.
But yeah, longtime readers and part of my my online little private group called the Kristan Higgins Super Readers. So we're just people who are so enthusiastic. And, I've been published for 15 years, I think. And so your readers become like your friends, and, they are your friends. Sometimes we might go out to dinner or, see each other at events. And, I talk to them a lot in email and, have gifts, pictures that their kids drew me and stuff. So it's always really nice.
Family. It's your reading family.
It really is. Yep.
So I want to just let Sherry go ahead and start. You are the guest host right now, Sherry. What do you want to ask Kristan? Your favorite author?
Well, first of all, I'm trying not to fangirl because I am such a fan, truly. So, but I have to say first, I finished Pack Up the Moon probably about 10 days ago, maybe. And oh my goodness, the book Hangover. It's hanging on for a while. It's just wonderful. But I was a little reluctant, I'll admit, because I knew it was going to be a really heavy subject. And I mean, the blurb itself gives that away. That's not a
Sure.
secret going in.
Right.
So,
Right.
Kristan, how did you, I guess, as I was reading through it, and to be perfectly honest, about a third of the way in, I'm thinking, why am I doing this to myself? This is going to be so hard. How did you manage to pull that together? So in the end, I have literally recommended it to everybody I know. It's wonderful.
I want, I don't shy away from sad and difficult subjects in my books, even though I think I write with a lot of humor. And I would say this book especially is very uplifting and life affirming, but it is also about a young woman who dies 3 years into her marriage before she's even 30. So I guess I wanted to write one of those epic Fault in Our Stars, or Maybe For You kind of books where you see the journey of the person where death is walking right next to them, and you know how this is going to end. So the book was inspired. I've told the story a dozen times, but bear with me because, any cool story, it's worth retelling. I was up here on the Cape finishing another book, and it was winter, and it was like 12 degrees out with a bitter wind off the ocean. I was taking my dog for our daily walk on the beach, and he was shivering and I was shivering, and we both had coats on, he's a short-haired dog. And I was just like, let's get home before we die. And we were the only ones at the beach when we came on, but as we were leaving, I saw this man, and he was just wearing like a regular jacket and no hat. And he was standing at the edge of the ocean, just staring out. He didn't turn to look at, some lady in a pink parka and her dog. And I just thought, he looks heartbroken. He looks like the loneliest man in the world. And I want to write a story about him. So I thought, it's a risk, right, to write a sadder story, but people do get terminal diagnoses, and you do have to figure out how to live with them. So in doing some research, I found a little documentary that documented people who are living with a terminal diagnosis. And what struck me the most was how joyful everyone was. And that's not a word I use a lot, like a happy, content, giggly, but these people were just so full of joy, and they were funny, and they were graceful, and they were sarcastic. And, and I was like, I want to be friends with all these people. I love these people, and here's this young woman who's also a newlywed. She has terminal leukemia. Her husband, has to carry her on his back sometimes. Here's another couple where she has a brain tumor, and she's already lived like 7 years beyond she was supposed to. And, there's a young man like performing live on stage, and he's written a song, and it was just this beautiful, uplifting show about people in this extraordinary circumstance. And so I wanted to explore, like, how do you have the best time of your life when you're living with a terminal diagnosis? Because that's one of the first things Lauren says is, this has been the best year of my life. And I know I'm getting close to the end. So, so I wanted to explore how that would happen, and also to take that lonely guy on the beach and get him to a happy place, even though he's, devastated and lost the love of his life. How do you go on? Right? That's the question. How do you actually go on? And do you ever, get over it? The answer is no. You'll always love Lauren, and that's very clear. But you get stronger, and you get more adept at carrying the memory of your person. Whether it's, a parent or a child or a sibling or a friend or a partner, you'll never stop missing this person, but that doesn't have to be painful all the time. It's obviously going to be painful in the beginning and throughout different times, because grief doesn't really run in a straight line. Okay. So I wanted to show this woman who was living her best life, full of happiness and joy and practical jokes and laughs. and show kind of like, how do you get to that space of grace? And also to show Joshua, how do you get from grieving widower to happy man? Hope that answers your question.
And it's interesting that you say that, because the scene in the book that was the ultimate gutted was that scene on the beach. So it's, it sounds like you literally wrote that into the book, and it's so powerful.
Yeah. Thank you.
Kristan, let me ask you a question. You write so poignantly about this. Have you had a loss like that?
I have never lost a partner, but I lost my dad when I was about Lauren's age, when she loses hers. So that was something from my own life that I worked in. And, I used that experience of sort of, your dad is alive one day and the next day he's gone. Right. And for both Lauren and me, it made us grow up fast. So we had to become adults very quickly and reprioritize. And the knowledge that life can end without you planning for it, it does, I think, instill a certain attitude in you that life is uncertain, there will be losses ahead. And in some ways, I think it allows you to live more fully, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. Yeah, it does. Marissa, would you like to ask Kristan a question?
Oh, sure. I think one of my favorite scenes in that I could most relate to was when Josh started crying in Banana Republic and meets Bradley, because I think, personally, I've made the best friends and relationships when I was vulnerable and, wasn't like, oh, everything's great, and I was able to connect that way. So I was just wondering if you've had, certain moments like that you remember that you kind of drew from.
Yeah. My other great loss in life was my firstborn. So that was as horrible as you would imagine. And the worst thing, like, you could keep it together until some stranger was nice to you. And then you just crash, fall apart. You're just so unguarded. And in that moment when Josh is, Bradley has, grabbed him all these clothes, and he puts on these clothes and he looks at himself in the mirror. And, like, since her death, he's been wearing like t-shirts and sweats and athletic gear. And he looks at himself and he thinks I look like Lauren's husband. And that just ruins him, because now he's Lauren's widower. And so he's sobbing on the floor, and here's this clerk, Radley, who comes, and he's so compassionate and so nice. And
makes me want to cry again.
makes Josh feel like less like a freak, and
Right.
And he doesn't have to worry about talking about Lauren with Radley, because Radley he never met her. So he's not also grieving her loss, which is new for Josh, because everyone so far has known her, right? And is also grieving. So Radley and Josh become really good friends, and he's probably my favorite character in the book. He's just a lot of fun. He's everything you want in a friend. And I just actually, one of my readers is a gay man who used to work at Banana Republic. And he said, I can confirm that we are all just as great as Radley.
Oh, that's so nice.
It was really sweet.
Sherry?
The other question that I would have is, I found it a really cool choice that Josh was actually on the spectrum. So, rather than, the traditional romantic, perfect man hero, that in and of itself was an interesting take. And I loved the way Lauren handled that. So what prompted that choice?
Well, one of the things that you do as a novelist is, you set this impossible challenge for your character, and you pick the person least equipped to deal with it. So it will make it harder for Josh than, say for my husband or something, because Josh he works for himself when Lauren meets him. He's a super genius, literally. He is a medical device engineer, so he's saving the world one device at a time. And he's on the spectrum, so, or neurodiverse is what we're calling it now. So he's neurodiverse, and he's, that comes with some baggage, but it also comes with some great gifts. And but because he is somewhat isolated and very content with like the 4 people he has in his world, Lauren coming into his life, it's like when Dorothy leaves the house in The Wizard of Oz, and it's all color, right? And here's this woman, and she's so bouncy and happy and energetic, and she has this family, and they do things, and she brings all this color into his world. And then, she leaves, she dies. And so Josh keeps thinking a lot of times throughout the book, like, Lauren would tell me what to do here. Lauren would make this less awkward. And what would Lauren say, and he uses her kind of as his touchstone to get out in the world. And that's the whole point of the letters, is that Lauren knows Josh is sort of ill-equipped to face this, because he has this tunnel vision on, finding her a cure and taking care of her. And then when that's just gone, he's going to need some help. So she writes him the letters with, very loving message each month, and also a job for him to do to push him back out into the world. And in that way, over this year that we followed Josh, she does it again. She brings him back to life again.
Yeah. Loved it.
Marissa?
I guess I was just wondering too with their dog, if you think, because it wasn't explicitly that Lauren chose to get him or her before, she passed, but do you think that was part of it? Just because I know even having my dog during the pandemic, there were days where I was like, I don't want my kids out of the house. Like early on, I was like, I don't even know what to do. I just want the 3 of us and our dog not to leave. And I'm like, well, he has to use the bathroom. I have to be somewhat normal. I have to keep moving. So I was just wondering if that was kind of a forethought too. You think that she purposely wanted, at least something to make him do that initial step of leaving the house?
I think, she knows her diagnosis when they get Pebbles, and they get this very energetic, cuddly dog. She's an Australian Shepherd mix. And Lauren, for one, it's a great comfort to Lauren to have someone to snuggle with and nap with all the time when she, when she's not feeling well. But the other thing is, yes, the dog is going to outlive her. And,
right. I remember her joking about that.
And Josh goes a little crazy. He gets really angry that she's joking about the dog will outlive me. And it's one of their few fights, where he says, you cannot joke about this. And she says, I have to joke about this. I'm not going to be able to get through this without some humor. And it's one of those very poignant moments where they come together and they each kind of understand each other that much more, and the burden that each is dealing with.
When I spoke to you about one of your other books, we talk about your titles a lot, and you said your mom helps you with your titles.
Yeah, sometimes she does. Yeah.
So where did Pack Up the Moon come from?
This was actually my title, and I thought of it all by myself. So super proud of that. This is from the beautiful poem by W.H. Auden called Funeral Blues. And it starts, Stop All the Clocks. So it's also called Stop All the Clocks. And it's most famous for being read during 4 weddings and a funeral, when a man loses his husband to a heart attack, and he recites the poem at the funeral. And so the line is, pack up the moon, dismantle the sun, let the stars fall from the sky, because there's that sense when you lose somebody that the world can't keep going on without him or her.
How can the world keep going on?
And
I lost my best friend March 1st.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Unexpectedly.
Oh.
Excuse me. So I say, who do you get mad at? Why is there a next day? Why does the sun come up?
Yeah.
How can everybody just keep on living? Don't they know this horrible thing has happened?
Right.
So
or it happened to them.
Yeah.
there's a reference to it in the book where Josh, obliquely references, like, at some point the clock started again.
Yeah.
And there's that moment where he realizes, like, everybody else's life is still going forward. Lauren's sister has children, her mom has a job, and he feels like the one really marooned by that day. And it happens to all of us when you are the only one who thinks of your baby that day, or your father, your sibling, your partner. And it's, it's devastating, but it's part of what we experience as humans.
Right.
We all are going to lose somebody too soon, close to us. And, not even someone who's young. When my grandfather died, he was 94 years old.
Wow.
Wonderful, amazing life, 9 children, dozens of grandchildren. My mom was 70 at the time, and she was broken because her dad died. She's like, it's 7 decades upon this world, and I've never not had a dad.
Yeah.
And, so, like, there's no great time to lose somebody. There's no way to lose somebody, even if, like my grandfather, he was winding down, and, it was time, right? But it was still devastating. The great man was gone. And it really does feel like my skin has been peeled off. How come people are looking at me like I'm normal?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Let's talk about some happy things. You said you were writing another book before you started writing this one. Have you completed the other book, or was it your prior?
That was Always the Last to Know, which came out.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure. I had that one too. I have all of them.
I do. I want to talk about some happy things and Pack Up the Moon, lest people think, like, this is too sad. It is sad. And like with all my books, I'm hoping to make you cry at least a couple times. But in exchange for that, you also get to laugh. There are some very outrageously funny scenes in here. There's some Black humor. There's but my favorite scene involves Joshua getting a new hobby, which is one of the tasked upon him by Lauren, is like, you need to get out more, honey. And so he calls her best friend, who's, now his friend, and says, like, don't you take karate? And he goes to the karate studio for his first lesson. And that was such a fun scene to write. And I think a lot of the scenes I deliberately placed so that, like, you can have some relief now, right?
From the sadness, right?
Yes.
And just like in real life, like I remember going to the cemetery on the day of my dad's funeral, and something happened in the limo that we were all cracking up. We were like crying with laughter because it's a release. It's a relief to laugh sometimes. And Josh ends up loving karate despite his rocky start, and his fellow classmates, which I loved picturing that,
I'm so happy that you did this, though, because otherwise this would not be a Kristan Higgins book had you just let it be this sorrowful thing. There was so much beauty in the story anyway, regardless, but you do have to have that emotional break when you're reading something like this. The Fault in Our Stars took me like 10 times before I got it. It swept the whole time, and You Before Me, and
right.
I couldn't even watch the whole movie all at once. It was too traumatic for me,
Uh-huh.
So I want to move on a little bit, Kristan. What is the feedback that you're getting that people don't like about the book? Is it because they think it's too sad?
Yeah, I've seen some people post, like, I'm afraid to start this.
Right.
And the wonderful thing about this being my 21st book is that my readers generally trust me,
right.
And they know what they're in for. They know that this is going to be sad, but she's going to lift us up in the end.
Right.
And that was absolutely my intention. So when people say, like, I think this might be too sad, maybe it's not the right time for you to read it. You can make up your own minds because you're an adult, but I also think, like, this is, and I've gotten a lot of feedback to this as well, is like, this is a great book to read after the pandemic. As we were talking before we went live, like, we have all been, sitting with our shoulders hunched, waiting for what comes next. What are we going to do? What are we going to be like as a nation, as a world? You know, is anyone going to die that I love? Did I just get COVID by going to the supermarket? So it was a very difficult time that we went through. And I really believe that reading this book gets to unlock some of those,
all that emotion, right?
and you just get to like lance the boil, and because it's easy to cry over someone fictional, you know. Josh and Lauren aren't real, you know, and I'm glad you feel that they are. But I think for me, like, I love to watch really scary movies, you know, woman alone, no neighbors around. That's basically my life. And in comes like the scary clown. I love it because it's fake, you know. If I feel like I'm watching it, what are the odds that the clown will get into my house, right? If I'm watching a movie, when I go on an airplane, I try to watch an airplane crash movie, you know, like went to
You're more twisted than we really thought, Kristan, I have to say.
No, it's like
I know you were this sick.
I recommend this to everyone. What are the odds that you're going to be in a plane crash when you're watching Castaway?
Watching the plane
right?
crash.
So it's like a coping mechanism.
Twisted logic, my friend, but gosh, I understand it. You know?
I flew to Australia and I watched Castaway, Flight, and right? Watched, you know, I don't sleep on planes, so I was like, oh, what's another plane crash movie? Because what are the odds? So I think that reading this book lets, you know, if you have been sort of clenched with worry over the past 18 months, you'll get to let some of that out. And by the end, like Sherry said, you know, you get to like, you carry the book with you. I think overall, this is a very uplifting book, and it's
I love the book. I think it's fabulous.
Love story, you know.
Yeah, it is a love story, and it's a love story that's very real in our world. You know, people die young, people in love die and lose each other. But it's wonderful. So let me ask you, what do you have planned next, or are you just taking it easy? This is a massively big Kristan Higgins book, by the way.
It is, and you know, it definitely. Because I was writing it before the pandemic, but I finished it during the pandemic, and you know, it wasn't an easy book to write for sure, especially when I was away from my family, because we were like declared in lockdown, and I was here at the Cape, and my family was home in Connecticut, and my husband, the firefighter, my daughter, the nurse, said, we're high risk. You can't come home. We don't know enough right now to live in the same house. So just stay there. So it was like 5 or 6 weeks where, you know, I didn't see anybody. I saw my dog. And so it did, you know, it did take a lot out of me, but I'm so like, it also really like filled me up too. And I'm so proud of the book, and, you know, the reviews from readers and reviewers have been amazing. So, you know, if anyone out there is thinking like, do I want a sad book right now? I'm going to say, yes, you absolutely do.
So Kristan, how about this? You have 2 readers in front of you.
Yes.
Actually, right here in front of you. It doesn't happen often, and it hasn't happened for a year and a half at least.
No.
So what do you want to know from readers as the writer?
I guess I would love to know what you like most when you pick up a book, like what reading experience is the best for you.
So Sherry, why don't you answer first?
Gosh, that's tough. You know, sometimes it depends on my mood, but in general, I think what I look for is a seamless entry into whatever world that is. So it really needs for me to be pulled into a book. It has to have kind of its own, the clarity of the world needs to be seamless. And I'm having a hard time explaining what I mean, but because the flip side of that is if the detail is so detailed that I get lost in it, then I'm out of the book too. But I think what I love so much about Kristan's writing is I immediately, it doesn't matter. I think I've read everything, and every single time I'm completely immersed. And I feel like I'm their friend, or I am their sister, or I am their, and I love that you write relationships that I can relate to. So, I mean, at the end of the day, that's really what does it for me. That's why I'm such a fan.
Thank you.
You know, Kristan is probably the most unfussy writer friend I have. She's just as down to earth as anybody I've ever met. You know, and I've done about 2,000 author interviews. I go to a bunch. I mean, we've seen each other at a couple of conferences, and you know, she just kind of slides with the crowd there. She's not uppity. I have to say that it's so much fun being around you. It really is. It's been a long time though. My gosh.
How about Marissa? What do you look
Yeah,
for?
Marissa.
Experience.
Talk about your book likes.
Gosh, I feel it for me personally. I like to read kind of different genres, like depending on the mood. So, but I mean, I know like with authors like Kristan that I like I know I can like count on it. Like I know I'll enjoy it. I mean, the first book I read was The Best Man, and I think I've read that 5 times. It's so funny and fun and relatable. And, you know, we've all been in those situations where, you know, it just like, it's so great. And so I think if it starts off, like Sherry said, like relatable, like someone I could relate to or something interesting, or it begs the question, well, what is going to happen? Or, you know, I do like mystery, like what could happen and how is this going to unfold? And I care about these people. So I want to know what happens, and I need to see like what the journey is and how all of it goes. So
Interesting. Sherry, are you particularly a romance reader, or do you read across genre also?
You know, primarily, I will say I really became an avid reader. I was an avid reader when I was young, and then when I was raising my family, there just wasn't time. So as my kids grew up, I started mostly in romance, but over time, I've sort of ventured more into domestic thrillers and just women's literature. So,
Right.
and really, to be perfectly honest, I tend to find an author that I love, and then I gobble up everything they write. So you know, and so even if they're across genres, you know.
I'm glad you said that, because there was one romance writer who said she thought it was terrible that people bought books from used bookstores. And at a time before I was doing this, and I've been doing this for 10 years, I used to go to used bookstores. I'd buy books at garage sales, you know, for like 25 cents and all, because I just love to read. I read 400 books a year. So I don't have a television, and I live with 4 cats. It hasn't affected me at all.
No, I mean, I think if people are reading,
but it's a great job.
I don't care where you got your book, you know, library, used book sale, you know.
To Sherry's comment, though, you know, she'll find one writer that she likes, and she'll go and read those other books. So I never read romance before, and my former neighbor from a long time ago turned me on to your books. And so I went, and first of all, I looked up all the books in order, because I always thought that's how you're supposed to read books. What did I know? I didn't know you weren't writing series. So I have a shelf on my women's fiction and romance bookcase of Kristan Higgins right there. So, you know, it is, but I agree with you. Marissa, you also read it. Oh, by the way, Sherry, don't you think, and Marissa, don't you think romance stories like this one can be a mystery too? They're an emotional
absolutely,
right?
Yeah,
Emotional mystery. Yeah.
I won't spoilers, but yeah, just figuring out what Josh's path was going to be. And
that was really fun to write. And sometimes, you know, the path surprises me. I was just reading a book, fantastic book called Incense and Sensibility by Sonali Dave.
Sonali, yeah.
One of my very dearest friends. And she writes women's fiction, romance, a little heavier on the romance, I would say. She wrote this whole book, and I thought, how are they going to get together? You know, there's such high stakes here, such good reasons for them not getting together. And yet, like, their hearts need to be together. So, you know, it was right up until the end. I was just ripping through that book thinking, you know, it's so great to not know how it's going to work out, even when you trust that it will work out.
Yeah. Interesting. I met Sonali down here in Fort Myers at Southwest Readers Fest. I think you were down here one year, right? Southwest Readers Fest in Fort Myers? No?
I've been to Romance, Wine, and Chocolate down there.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You've been, that's where you've been. And then I saw you at RWA too.
Mm-hmm.
But Sonali was here and we just had the best conversation. And she did come on the show because she's so influenced by Jane Austen. And I don't really like to read old Jane Austen, but Sonali put such a modern spin to it.
Yeah, and
it's incredible.
She's not the first to have done
a
riff on Pride and Prejudice, but she's doing it so well, and all through this one family, this big sprawling family in Northern California.
Right.
And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. And so that was that kind of immersion experience that you were talking about, Sherry, and you're sucked right into that world and carried along. And I love that too. I said to Sonali, because I called her a fangirl, and I said that the greatest thing for me as a writer is to forget that I'm a writer when I'm reading a book, to forget about sentence structure or, oops, you said this in chapter 3 and now you forgot that you said it in chapter 12, just to be completely caught up in the story. Is what I love. And I also read across genres. I love domestic noir. I don't know if that's a thing, but I love it. I read Pretty Little Wife by Darby Kane that I've been talking about everywhere because that was a very unique story too.
Right.
And a very immediately who the killer is, but that in chapter 1, who the killer is. The whole thing is
you don't know what's going to happen with that killer.
Where did the body go? That's the question, And I was like, what? Wait, I can't read this, So
I love those kind of stories. The thriller stories, you already know who the bad guy is. You're just thinking, oh, what next?
Right.
What next is going to happen? So I get that. So Marissa, when you go to a bookstore to pick out a book, or you're going online or something. Not Kristan, because we are all fans of Kristan. We know that. What draws your eye to a book? What makes you stop and take it off the shelf or stop it when you're doing, scrolling through?
That's tough. I feel like you do a lot of book recommendations from friends or People Magazine or, different reviews. But if I'm it could take me hours. Like if pink's if anything's pink, I'll be like, ooh, what's that about? Because I'm wearing pink head to toe, in the book. Must be really fun. But I love historical fiction, especially a lot of women's historical fiction that's come out, like the Alice Network. I'll read the back and I'll see, that piques my interest, or I just think it's so great. There's so many strong female characters and just.
I love that. So what you're going to do is after the show, you're going to send me an email and I'm going to send you a big box of books of historical fiction with women heroes. I get about 50 books a week from publishers from around the country. I get 300 emails a day asking for interviews. Mine is only one show of 30 in our network. So, but I do not read historical anything. I know, meet me right now. It is
that's okay.
Give me really good fantasy. Like
you do.
Yeah. I'll read that. I'll read a post-apocalyptic. I'll read urban punk, any of that stuff. I just can't read historical. I don't know why. Makes me feel older. I don't know.
No, I think for me, I just have such a in my head, I'm like, wow, this really could have and I have so much respect for the research that the author does. I think about, I'm an accountant, so when I think back to school of, I can do tax research and tax law, but all of the different things that get pulled, and I'm just amazed. To me, that's a different type of genius. And even with Kristan's books of all the different diseases or medical and all of, I'm like, how did she learn all these devices?
Copious research, dear. So you're going to get in touch with Kristan, and she's going to give you my email address, and or vice versa. However, we'll make sure. Sherry, what do you particularly like to read, and what draws your eye to a book?
Well, again, my first go-to is generally romance. I tend to, but then again, I go to the authors that I know and love.
Okay.
And I have to admit, though, I am a really big fan, especially the last few years, of audiobooks. So I've really gotten pulled into kind of that audiobook world. And just like I love authors, I also love narrators.
Narrators.
A great narrator will introduce me to a new author.
That's true. I've never listened to an audiobook because it's too slow for me. I can read 2 books in a day. So I think, how many hours is your book, Kristan?
On audio, I think it's 12.
Yeah. See, I could read 2 books in that time easily, 2 full-size books.
It is a completely different experience.
That's what everyone tells me, because you're listening instead of thinking. You're not visual. It's audio.
If you have a great narrator, and I am blessed with the narrators, Exie was the first, Exie Sands was the first narrator assigned to me. And I listened to the clip and I was like, oh my gosh, she is that character. That's exactly how I picture that character. So I've clutched Exie to me, and Dion is also the only male narrator that I've had, I think.
So
too.
I do ask you this: how do you decide, like for Pack Up the Moon, how many narrators are you going to have in your audio? And how do you decide?
Well, I generally don't. So the people that recorded books do. This one is a little bit different in that it's when Lauren is narrating her chapter, Dion is the voice of Josh. So he's interjected there. So it's more like a play or a movie. But they recorded books is very generous, and they let me weigh in on narrators. And if in one of my books I had 3 women narrators.
Huh.
So Exie, I was like, okay, you're going to be Sadie, and then who will be this character, that character. And so I get to listen to the artists, and it's really, it is a different world. And I think that there are some books that are narrated by celebrities to their detriment, because you think like, I can't separate my vision
right
or something from this story.
Right.
Or and some do a very wonderful job. I think Carrie Mulligan did a great job on The Midnight Library. But it really is a different experience. And I also didn't used to listen to audiobooks as much, because I'm not still enough to listen to audiobooks. I'm either writing my own or doing things.
Right.
But when I was on the pandemic last year, Jojo Moyes had a book called The Peacock Emporium, and I listened to it, and I ended up writing her a fan letter, or Twitter friends, and I just said, I'm in the pandemic all by myself, and your book and your wonderful narrators have kept me company and kept me sane. I was listening to them when I was eating or cooking or, sitting in the living room. And so a huge shout out to the talent that audiobook narrators bring. It really is that different kind of experience. And, you can't go wrong either way, whatever floats your boat.
So, Sherry, I want you to be in touch with your email to Kristan, and I'm going to send you a gift card for audiobooks.
Awesome. So nice.
Okay.
That's great.
And because you both have been excellent guest hosts, do you want to give a sign off and say hello to anyone, or anything to Kristan before we go?
No pressure.
Well, I just want to thank, obviously, Kristan, thank you so much. Hours and hours and hours of enjoyment listening to and reading your books for these past many years. But I have to say, Pack Up the Moon is my absolute favorite. So it was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sherry and Marissa.
Yeah, I just thank you, to echo Sherry. I've literally hours and rereading some of my favorites and Pack Up the Moon. It was embarrassing at the pool with the kids to At least I had sunglasses. But I just loved it. And I've had my rescue dog for a couple years, and I think intuitively you must have inspired me with all the dogs
Oh,
in the book. So this is my Mr. Prince. He's my one-eyed Shih Tzu.
Oh my gosh, look at that. He looks like a stuffed animal.
I know.
Yeah, so he only has one eye, and he sees an ophthalmologist for that one.
Bless his heart. You know, I'm with 4 cats, as I told you. You know, I have lots of books and lots of cats. Those are the only 2 things I collect. And when I was reading this, I'm laying on this sofa, and my cat kept going like this, and I was like, "What are you doing?" Well, I was crying, and he's like,
A therapy cat.
Yeah.
"No," and the other one bites my fingers. That's just feed me. You know, get over your troubles, Mom, and get up and feed me. So, ladies, thanks for being with us. I
Thank you
really
so
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You know, I love talking to you. I have the best time. We're going to go to Kristan Higgins Super Readers, and we're going to see how many people paid attention to this, and we're going to give away another gift card, okay?
Oh, so nice. Thank you, Pam.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for so many hours of joy, and thank you for being patient with me while I came back after medical leave, you know.
I'm glad to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll do something again soon, okay?
Sounds